Welcome back to the Perfect Brainstorm, how to facilitate a productive and effective brainstorming session, part 2. Welcome back. So just a little catch up. In the last video, part 1, we talked about some of the challenges and problems that come up that can derail good brainstorming. And now in this video, I'm going to share with you the structure that I've developed and devised in order to fix that, in order to have a good brainstorming process. Now, I highly recommend if you stumbled across this video first, go ahead and watch it. You're going to learn all about how to facilitate a great brainstorming. And I would definitely go back afterwards and watch the first video so you can really see what are some of the problems and challenges to watch out for as you facilitate your brainstorming. Are you ready? Okay, let's go. And the first thing that starts with is to find a great facilitator. Find a person who will run the session for you. Do not try to have somebody running the session and being in the session at the same time. It's really much more effective to designate one person, the facilitator. And if you can find somebody who's a professional facilitator who really knows how to do this, that would be great. Or you can show them these videos and tell them to watch these videos and structure the brainstorming based on this 3-part series that I've created. The next thing I want to do is set aside the time for the brainstorming session. So there are basically 5 key components to what you're going to do. The first is you're going to prepare the session, meaning you're going to prepare everyone in the room to brainstorm. So you're going to set some ground rules. I'll go deeper into detail on that later. So prepare. Then you're going to need the actual brainstorming session itself. Then you'll have an evaluation portion where you've taken all the ideas that you've gleaned from the brainstorming and you'll evaluate them. Then you'll do a concluding session where you pick out the ones that are the 1 or 2 that are the most effective that you want to follow through with. And then finally, you may want to do some sort of reporting back to everybody of what was decided and where you're going with it. Now, in terms of preparation, there are 2 schools of thought. There are some people that say, don't prepare anybody. Don't ask anybody to prepare anything. Don't poison the well with any ideas. Just have people come in clean and neutral. And then another school of thought is, yes, you want people to prime the pump. You want them to come up with some ideas and you want them to do some of the work on their own before coming in. So what I like to do is I like to do a little bit of both. I like to combine these 2. Essentially, I'll say, hey, everybody, you're coming to this thing. This is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to brainstorm about. And what I'd like you to do is just bring your top 5 best ideas for how to do this to the table. That way there's a little bit of preparation. They've organized it into these 5 or 10 or, this finite number of things, and they bring it. And then during the preparation of the group, that way they've got the things, they've already invested their ideas into their own, they've got their own thing that they're bringing to the table. And then part of the preparation is to bring those ideas and let them go. And our commitment is to share these ideas and then to think of new ones. We're not going to get attached to the ones we came with. We're just going to share them and then see what comes next from them. So that's part of that pre-frame preparation part of the session where I'm letting people know how this is going to go. The next thing to do in this preparation is to set the ground rules of the brainstorming. This is crucial. This is where you're going to solve ahead of the time. This is where you're going to head off at the pass all those problems that I shared with you in video 1. So the first thing you're going to make sure of is that people are fully present and not distracted. No cell phones, no outside meetings, no coming and going. Let them know that you're going to have breaks. So there will be bathroom breaks. There'll be logistics breaks. That way people are not wondering, oh, are we ever going to get a break? Am I ever going to get out of here? And they don't feel the need to get up and leave because they know, oh, a break is just 10 minutes away. A brainstorming session should not start until everybody is present. So you can include that in the invitation, letting people know that they need to be there on time. And if they're not there on time, they're not going to be part of it. If you don't already have a facilitator, this would be a great time to choose a facilitator and also to designate a recorder, somebody that's going to write down notes of everything that is said. You might even want to have 2 recorders if it's a really boisterous session. Now, before I get into what happens in the actual brainstorming session, I do want to invite you to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and please share any comments about your experiences with brainstorming sessions below. Now we're going to get into ideation. This is the fun part. This is the actual brainstorming session itself. Ideation is where we start to gather the ideas. So couple things to keep in mind for ideation, and this is what you'll want to share with your group. The first is that we're looking for quantity over quality. No, you got me. I said it right. Quantity over quality. And the reason for that is because really what we're looking for at this stage is volume. There's a distinction between the creation process and the editing process, and people sometimes confuse them. And that's one of the things that derails brainstorming. You want to separate out creation from editing. We will come and we will cut away and we will edit later. But first, we just want to build. We just want to have, creation is an additive process, and we want to dump in as many ideas as possible, and we want to build on each other's ideas. So here are some ground rules. Number one, people have to agree to suspend judgment. This is very hard. When people put out an idea, sometimes people immediately want to say, that'll never work. How do you propose we do that? This is going to have all these problems. It's a natural thing, but you don't want that to happen. So you want to come up with a rule. I like to call it no quashing. It's a no quashing rule. You cannot quash anybody's idea. The crazier the idea, the better. We capture all ideas. We do not judge ideas in the ideation phase. We only judge them later. Another rule is that we build on top of other people's ideas. So when somebody says something, let it land, let it sink in, and see if you can one-up it. See if you can add to it. See if you can beef it up even more before switching to another idea. When you're doing all this, you want to put a visual representation of these ideas as they're popping up, like on a whiteboard or something like that, so that people can see it. And you want to number each idea. You want to put a number next to each one, a sequential number, so that you have, by the end, a numbered list of ideas. Now, the first ideas that come out will inevitably be the obvious ones, the low-hanging fruit, the easy ones, and probably the least imaginative ideas. This is where brainstorming gets fun. When you're not quashing each other's ideas, when you're building on each other's ideas, when you are building each other up, when you're not judging and you're having fun, that's when some of the best ideas come out. And then every once in a while, it's a good idea to let people know, all right, we have 5 minutes left. We have 3 minutes left. We have 1 minute left, and just kind of building the energy towards the final culmination of like, all right, here it is. These are all of our ideas numbered and ready for the next step, which is evaluation. So evaluation is where we take the ideas and we start to evaluate the best ones and which ones are the ones that are the best fit. You're going to have, stupid ideas, you're going to have crazy ideas, you're going to have impossible ideas, but in there somewhere is some idea most likely that's going to be the perfect one or two or three. Before you move into evaluation, just let people know, okay, the ideation phase has now ended and we are moving into the evaluation phase. You might even want to take a little potty break at that point so that people can kind of clear out their brains and then come back. And when you come back, you need to establish evaluation criteria. This is critical because otherwise you might forget something really important and choose an idea that doesn't meet all your needs. So at this stage, you establish the evaluation criteria. So for example, in the ad agencies, a lot of times we would, one evaluation criteria, because I worked with Hispanic agencies, was it's got to work in Spanish and in English. Another evaluation criteria is that it needs to be aligned with the brand. It needs to connote quality or something like that. So anything that's like a deal breaker, you want to identify that, or something that's really critical to make sure that it's included in the idea or the strategy. So what you're going to do is each idea is going to be evaluated against all the criteria. I recommend having somewhere around maybe 5 criteria, maybe 5 to 10 criteria that you can easily judge each idea on. And before you even get into evaluating them, you might also want to group certain brainstorm ideas together. If there's 2 things that are very similar, start to group them into groups that are like, type alike groups so that you can evaluate them as a group rather than one by one, especially if you have hundreds of ideas. And before you actually start to evaluate, you might want to clarify any ideas. So maybe there's something that you wrote down at the beginning and people don't even remember what that was anymore. So clarifying what it is and having it be explained and maybe just teased out a little bit more might help before you get into the evaluation session. And so as you enter the evaluation and you're looking at each against the evaluation criteria, you can start to cut out and cut away certain ideas that don't meet the standards and then get down to a smaller list. And then you might want to have, now that you have a smaller list, you can actually evaluate each idea against the criteria with a ranking scale. So you want to say, all right, this idea, you take each thing on the ranking scale, maybe on a scale of 1 to 5 of how well it meets that criteria, and say, all right, this idea that we're going to do this marketing initiative, how well does it translate from Spanish to English easily? Yes, on a scale of 1 to 5, 5. You do that on each one, and then you can get a score. So this is something actually like really tangible. You can get a score for each idea, and by the end, if you've taken each idea through the evaluation criteria, you should have a score for each idea, and then you can pull the top 2 or 3 or 5 ideas to take through to the final stage of the process. So that was part 2 of the Perfect Brainstorm, where we talked about the ideation and evaluation portions of the brainstorm. Meet me over in part 3 as we talk about how to conclude a brainstorming session and how to follow up.